Man, so it's so good to
Well,
see you.
it's good to see you. Good to see
Man,
you.
very good. But yeah, Open Brother podcast, Open Brother project, where we talk to men. Host Colin Cummings, what's up? And here's Nick Ward, everybody.
Hey, yes, yes. Good day. Good to be here.
Man, so yeah, how you how are you feeling? First off, let's go to the present moment.
Love that. Well, I'm feeling a little like out of schedule today, this weekend.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, we had like my son was sick, and then my partner got sick, and then I got a little bit sick at the end of the week. So everything just kind of tilted and uh, into a bit of a merging of schedules and plans, and everything just kind of got stuck together. So right now I'm just in a space of like being like, oh, it's okay, like my partner just woke up like just before this podcast happened, so I don't have to worry about my son like coming in and yelling and doing fun stuff like he likes to do. And I've got a chance to just take a minute to like decompress that with your first question. So thank you for that.
Cool, cool, cool. That's good. That's good. Yeah, I got no kids yet, but I just cram myself into the corner of the kitchen. That way, my wife has free reign of the whole house and she doesn't have to tiptoe around me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I made this look kind of nice. I was just like, I gotta make this look like something, or else it'd just be a white background. It would look like I was being like held hostage. I didn't want that.
No, you have to like hold today's newspaper in your hand, showing that you're still alive.
Exactly, exactly. And I guess moving from the present moment, a little bit about your story. Like, what was it like for you growing up, the profession that you're working in now, all that good stuff?
Hmm. Well, I definitely want to start with like the growing up part because I think that's important to
Yeah.
get the context. My my mom is West Indian. My mom was born in Guyana and grew up in Jamaica with my uncles and aunts and my grandparents. And she came to Canada in 1970 something to study, and that's where she met my dad. And so I grew up specifically from the masculine side. I grew up with two very different versions of masculinity: the sort of Canadian um, play hockey, very white, you know, shake a man's hand, look him in the eye, kind of masculinity, like that kind of uh, that very traditional or typical masculinity for those who are from Canada. And then on the other side, my mom's side, obviously, it was they came from a more. It was interesting because they came from a probably a higher class position than my dad's family, right? They were more of the elite of where we were from, and so that masculinity, that hey buddy, go talk to mom, okay? I'm just on a call. I'm just on a podcast. It's a podcast. His name's Colin. Say hi. Colin. Yeah. Hi. Say hi. Hi. There he
Hello.
is. He's on. Okay, buddy. Yeah, I know. We'll say hi after, okay? Yeah, mom will be there with you in a second. Can you close the door? Thank you. See you later, buddy.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So on my mom's side, the masculinity was all about success. Was all about being the best, making money, having a good job, having a very important job, like that everybody in the community looks and says, "Wow, look at that guy." So both had their, from both sides, and I'm kind of painting a picture a little bit, maybe from like a more of a toxic side of the masculinity, but I don't necessarily mean it that way. I just mean that like when I was growing up, it was like to be a man was to either work at a bank as like a vice president or uh, be a really great hockey player. and love sports and know every player's name and play with your, like my dad, I remember he played on like 4 different baseball teams and hockey teams and just like refereed hockey and just like that was that. And so that was really like the two um, snapshots of masculinity.
Wow. Wow. I would never think that from knowing you.
No?
No, I mean,
Hang on one second. Hang
that's
on.
kids. That's kids, ladies and gentlemen. That's how it is. That's what I'm about to get into. 2023, I'm gonna be having one of these guys running around.
Well, it obviously can be like difficult, like as we're witnessing right in this very moment sometimes. But I would say that it was only being a parent that I really learned what being a man to me is about. Being a like where it kind of it shifted everything. So um, so that's kind of coming into being a father. Those were the two kind of strongest perspectives of masculinity that I had. At the same time, as I was growing up, both of those conceptions of masculinity started to evaporate, and people started to challenge what is masculinity, what is manliness, um, and so I even though I had these two strong sort of models of masculinity, as I grew up, I started to question if I wanted to be that kind of a man, or if I wanted to be more than that, or if that was what I was pursuing. So yeah, it was a really interesting experience growing up because I felt like from the Caribbean side of my family, I always felt like this sense that if I had to be ambitious, I had to grow and rise in a company or be somebody. And I remember even my grandmother, she said I was when I quit my corporate job, um, they were like, oh, okay, why would you do that? Like I'm like, oh, I want to start a business, I want to do other things, and so that was okay. But then when I told my grandmother I got a part-time job at working at a junk removal company, she was just like, no, 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 no. That's she's like, can you? And this is the funniest thing she said. She's like, can't you find a job inside?
That's amazing. She can't have you in the field now.
Exactly. You look at your fair skinned boy. You're a cutlery shining motherfucker. Now get in there and put on a tie. Uh,
That's
so
amazing.
yeah. That was the sort of the background.
Cool. That's really cool. So I didn't know that. I actually always thought you were Latin. Just like
Okay.
looking at you, I would always look like I would be like South American or Mexican or something like that. Just from the hair and everything, and obviously, and honestly,
Yeah.
your vibe, you just laid back. But West Indian makes sense as well for that laid back vibe that you have.
I used to call myself indistinguishable ethnicity guy. That was my superpower.
It's true. It's true. Because if you told me you were Italian, I'd be like, okay, I got to go with that. If you said Greek, I'd be like, yep, okay.
I get everything for. I remember in grade 4, we had like one of the recess supervisors. So she wasn't a teacher; she was just hired to make sure we didn't claw each other's eyes out, I guess.
Yeah.
And so she said she came up to me one day in this very heavy Portuguese accent. And she said, "You, you are Portuguese." And I said, "No, no, I'm not." And she says, "No, you are. I can tell." I was like, sorry, ma'am, I'm really not. And then that was where that legend was born.
That's amazing. Yeah, Portuguese. I could completely see that. If you if you told me your father worked in construction your whole life and you guys are just hardworking Portuguese, I'd be like, yep, makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
But going back to I guess like playing on to the whole growing up thing, and just masculinity from those two sides. What was your relationship like with your father?
It was uh, it was a great relationship, but it wasn't necessarily always a father son relationship. In that, uh, for whatever reason, my dad leaned on me growing up for spiritual guidance and emotional support, and so we had a really tight relationship, and we did a lot of stuff together, martial arts, tennis, um, like all that. We did a lot of like that father son stuff, going to games and playing sports. And he came to watch my really difficult entry into football, where I didn't play a single minute in like 5 games in high school. And he drove from Toronto for 2 hours to London, Ontario, to watch me
Wow.
sit on the sidelines for like an entire season.
Wow.
So, like his heart was always in the right place, and he was always trying to be supportive and push me into things. And so, like, I guess from that perspective, he would be like the guy that would, tell me, oh, you should go apply for this job. And I'm like, well, I don't have remote qualifications for that job. He's like, don't worry about it. I know the guy, I know the manager. Give me your resume. I'm
Mm,
gonna get you this
mm.
job. Stuff like that. And so I wanted to go in high school. I wanted to go to travel into BC and Alberta for the summer and kind of just hitchhike around a bit. And he was like, okay, sounds good. How much money do you need? So, like, always very supportive in that way. But I always felt like in some ways I had to like support him in terms of
Mm.
his like emotions and um, yeah. So I remember like just in my 20s even saying to him one day, I'm like, listen, I just need you to be my dad for a minute. Like I got some shit that I'm dealing with, and I just need you to be the guy that gives me fatherly advice here. Like
Mm.
not make this about you somehow, not make this
True.
about your growth, but this is me. This is like a request for support for me. So that was, I would say, a pretty balanced assessment of father relationship.
Wow. So it was almost like in a way it was like father son, but then also best friend, but in the sense of like you're the best friend that he opens up to all the time, like that kind of thing, which is
Yeah.
great. But I could see how that could be wearing, especially when you're young.
Well, and I didn't know any different, right? Like for me as a kid, I thought this is like this is the best dad a kid could ask for in a way, because it was always just like, yep, let's get the football, let's get the tennis rackets, let's go out, let's go see a movie. Just really, yeah, yeah, very like a lot of camaraderie with my dad. I remember one time he lived in Africa for 2 years, and I went to visit him over the summer. And we were in this little village, African village, and there's like a mom and an auntie like trying to drag this like 15, 16-year-old kid to the clinic. And we didn't know it, but he was suffering from malaria. And it was very common in that village. People get malaria all the time. Like they just go to the clinic, bang bang, get some shots, and they're back on their feet in a couple of days. But it's a really like it's like the symptoms are brutal. He's literally like he can't even walk. He's just like delirious. So I remember my dad and we like created like a human stretcher with our arms, like a little, we just locked arms, and we just held this kid between our arms as we walked in like about maybe 2 or 3 kilometers in the heat to this clinic. And so like those are the kind of moments and memories that I have of my dad. Like we traveled. He always encouraged me to travel. Whenever I traveled somewhere later on, he would come and visit me there, and we'd go on like a little vacation and stuff like that. So it was, that sort of adventure companion that best friend energy, I think, could apply at some point. Sure.
Yeah, yeah. That's that's a beautiful that's a beautiful relationship. Although it's like, that's from me looking from the outside in. I mean, I'm somebody who like met my dad like, 10 times in total in my life. So to hear that, the locking of the arms and carrying somebody for so far, because that's crazy. That's really nice. That's really, really nice. That's amazing to hear actually. I've never heard any father son stuff like that in my life, actually, to be honest. Was he was the white side of the family?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So he's
Mhm.
just like straight from Canada?
Straight from Canada, born in Sarnia, Ontario.
Wow.
Um, Grew up with 8 brothers and sisters, and he just wanted to be an adventurer his whole life.
Yeah.
He wanted to leave Sarnia. He did. Most of his brothers and sisters didn't, but he did. Um, moved to the big city, started working, started traveling, and ended up he his he got married. He's been married 3 times, and he married a black woman each time with darker skin each wife. So his current wife is hopefully his forever wife is from Jamaica as well. So
Wow.
yeah,
Oh, wow. Yeah, he doesn't play around.
no,
He has a type.
he has a type.
Wow.
Um, but like that for us, like growing up in like the 80s, that was still strange. Like it wasn't.
Yeah.
He was an oddball. He was out there. I remember when my family, we moved to the Caribbean when I was about 7, and he took a leave of absence from his job and took his family to the Caribbean for a year. And his family thought he was crazy. Like they were just like, "What are you even? This is the worst thing ever. Like this is awful. This is a bad idea." And so he had to fight against a lot of that pressure to conform. And I guess in some ways I learned about masculinity through that as well. Like sometimes masculinity is doing the thing that isn't approved by those around you, or that people are trying to get you to be something. And it wasn't about like getting him to be, it was about safety, right? Their concerns were about safety of his job, safety of his family. So I guess sometimes masculinity is stepping outside of that safety and saying, I need to do something different. I need to create a new reality.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's a great way of putting it. That's a great way of putting it. Wow. Just hearing that, because like me myself, and I mean like you yourself, I want to make a big move out of Canada, probably to the States, South America. I have my eye on those type of things,
Mm-hmm.
and just thinking about it is it's very daunting. So the fact that he just did it and then had so much pushback from the rest of the family, that has to make it hard. I mean, like my family's just fully supportive. Like my
Mm-hmm.
mom's a globetrotter. She's what do they call it, a snowbird. So she lives in Barbados and then comes back
Right.
here when it's hot, and it's normal for us. But to
Mm-hmm.
have all the pushback and then to still do it, that's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty bold move to make, especially as
Mm-hmm.
a white Sarnia guy,
Yeah.
just dating Caribbean women.
That's it. He just was
Like,
he's a wild card, and he like
yeah.
didn't care, and he just was like, I'm doing it. And it's funny now because now, like 30 years later, all of his brothers and sisters, they go to Mexico for a vacation. They go to Jamaica. They go to Hawaii. Like they we went to Europe with my uncle and his wife, my dad and I. So like everybody, it was like it took him to step out of that for them to see it's okay for them. So that they're like, oh, actually, he didn't die. Everything's fine. The kids are still alive. So like maybe that's not such a bad thing. And then eventually their kids started to want to do things, travel more, and so eventually, now it's much more open from that perspective.
Yeah, as I get older, I start to realize that like what a man does with his life, it affects the whole family. And like that's like a perfect example, right? Like a lot of the times we have these abstract concepts of what could happen and what might happen, and but like your dad came with the concrete experience, and he like gave everybody that and said, here's actually what happens, and that
Mm-hmm.
gave them all a different abstract idea of what they could do, and then it just
Mm-hmm.
floats through the whole family tree, right? Like that's
Yeah,
amazing. It's
yeah.
amazing. I like your dad, man.
He's he's just a very he's like the ultimate extrovert. Like
Yeah.
just just always wanted to be around people. Gets all the energy from being in crowds and being with people and public speaking and all of that. So and that was another thing that I had to learn was that his being an extrovert does not make you masculine. And I think growing up, there was that divide: extroverts masculine, introverts feminine, right? That
Mm.
was like the very clear binary. And we didn't, we certainly talked about extrovert, introvert, but like it was understood, at least from him and growing up with him, that extroverts were like the real movers and shakers. They were the ones that get shit done and happen and all of that. And so, I had to learn like, I'm not my dad. I'm a different person, and I can express myself differently and still be masculine. Like I can still be my own type of man, just because I'm not replicating his personality traits. And so that was, that was a tough lesson, to learn and to be able to look to see him for his flaws, right? To see him that like, yeah, like he's great and he has a great life, and but he's not perfect, and he doesn't, he leaves certain people are left not feeling great after interactions, and certain people are left feeling, wow, this guy's the best guy ever, and somewhere in the middle is the truth, which is
Mm.
that, for me, I had to learn that, yeah, I mean, first of all, he's like bigger than me too, so he's like, my dad's 6'4", and so standing
Wow.
next to my dad, I actually look quite small, and I'm not at all a small guy. So that the whole process of like unlearning, uh, basically like being told from a very young age that, oh, I'm just like my dad. I walk like him. I have the same jokes. I have the same, kind of energy. And so I took that in like, yes, I am like him.
Mm.
Yeah, I have to not only, and I took it on in a weird way, because I was like, I took it on as a child thinking, yes, I'm like him. And yes, I have to help him become like me as well. Like
Mm.
I have to teach him to be a good man.
Yeah.
Even as a little kid, I had that sense like, I got to help him be a good man. I have no idea where that came from, but that was something I took on like a burden as a young child of like, I have to like make sure he does okay. I have to make sure that um, he finds the right woman who will support him, because he's kind of temperamental and difficult sometimes. So I was like, kind of always like thinking about like, oh, and my sister as well had similar perspectives, where we both just felt like we had to like look out for him, like he
Mm.
wasn't fully equipped to run in the world, without like special helpers and people to guide him and make sure he doesn't like get too far off track.
Wow. Wow, that's so different from what I've heard about. Well, I mean, like, I think it's so different because it's very open. Because most relationships I hear from guys with their father, it's very cut and dry, and it's not as deep. It never gets to go as deep. It seems like your dad was just like open, to a fault, but then also it's like I don't know. It's like, yeah, I guess there's good and bad with everything with when it comes to fathers. Like I always think of my father, obviously, when I apply it. So in comparison, I'm like, this sounds great. Like he's around and you get to talk to him and you know what he's like and
Mm-hmm.
all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And like on my side, it's like I don't have any of that. Like yeah, pretty much nothing in that sense. Like, but yeah, I guess there's faults everywhere. Everywhere.
It's like a level of, uh, yeah, I mean, like I think it's very common, to have inside of any intense relationship, when we know people, when we know their flaws as well as their positive qualities at a very deep level, um, they're, yeah, like I think relationships are messy. I think life is messy, and to to always be looking at like, to see the other people's experiences and realize like, man, like I don't know what it's like in someone else's shoes, like really, I don't know, I don't, and I think, um yeah, I mean, I think I hear a lot of that from other men when they hear about my relationship with my dad. They're envious of my relationship with my dad. Like my dad used to come out, he would come out after we would play rugby and win the championship. He would come out, and he doesn't drink, but he would come out and party with the team. And he would be out there. We would do stuff together. And people were very envious of that sort of like adventure kind of bond that we had together. And and so I thought it for a while. I was like, oh no, he is the perfect dad. Like he is the best dad
Mm.
ever. And but then what that led me to was that I wasn't able to see his flaws, and therefore I wasn't able to see my own flaws as clearly as I needed to. So part of me becoming my own man and recognizing my own limitations was being able to have an honest conversation about my own parents and who they are and who they are not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great insight. I've come through that realization as well. Um, in like different psychedelic ceremonies, kind of pulled myself out of myself and was able to kind of look at them. And I remember just coming out of certain experiences being like, they're just people, and that's why sometimes they're this way, sometimes they're that way. It's like they're just people, and they were my age that I am now when they were dealing with me, and it's like it just all makes sense of, just what was going on. A big thing with my father was he had an addiction. He was an alcoholic, and then smoked weed a lot and stuff like that. And then when I was in the grips of addiction, it made me realize, because I've been like, I'm like, I don't know, 5 months sober now. Um, but when I was in the grips of it, I kind of had a realization. I'm like, oh, this is why he didn't come and see me. I'm like, this is why, because I'm like, because like being like so high and not being able to do anything and not wanting to see people because of the state you're in. I was like, this is what it was. I'm like I was like actually like in what he was in, and I was like, this makes so much sense. I'm like, no wonder he couldn't. It's not that he didn't want to, because like I could feel it in myself. It's like I want to do all these things, but I'm just so much in the grips of it that I can't. So like, yeah, it was so enlightening to go through that and to experience that. And yeah, yeah, yeah. Fatherhood, it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing to observe. I'm sure it's an amazing thing to be within. It's really cool. Really cool to hear your experience with your father. What's something that you want to take with you into manhood, into fatherhood, that he did a lot?
Um, just like his general encouragement to pursue dreams, to
Mm.
pursue ideas, and to be like fearless in just stepping out into the world. Um, yeah, like my dad can be almost vulnerable to a fault in the sense of like having his emotions be very clear for others. Like he's not at all deceptive. He's just like what you see is what you get in terms of how he is. And I admire that. I admire that. I'm a bit more closed off in some ways because I didn't want to be like him, so I kind of created like counter personality types in some ways. But that general like fire to step into the world, to try new things, to be confident, to not worry if you fail, to just be like having that level of support. I definitely, I try to apply that with my own son.
Cool. Cool. I like that. The pursuing of dreams. That's definitely something that a lot of fathers need to take on. I think sometimes you get caught up. Well, from what I've seen, they get caught up in wanting to keep the child safe, wanting them to not have anything bad happen. So it's like just trying to get them to do what's best rather than like what is best, or like right, like for them, their highest happiness, their highest self. Yeah, I've seen a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that. That's a lot of that. That's cool, man. Really cool. And your mother, what was it like with your mother?
Uh, my mom was interesting growing up with her because she was trying to break away from the traditional Caribbean culture that was grown up in. She didn't, she was leaving that sort of conservative, like Christian background, trying to break free of cultural expectations for women, of cultural expectations from for what she felt, and so she found that freedom in Canada, and um, like a lot of first generation immigrants, she became uh, like so Canadian and so proud of being from Canada, and devoted her um, devoted like a large chunk of her life, like outside of work, was always around philanthropy and community building, and always on some library board of directors for some library restoration fund or whatever. She was always just like out in the community, and never wanting to pursue anything for herself, never feeling called to enter into politics, but just feeling like there were things in the world that she believed in and she was going to fight for, and she was going to show up and just be in the world, and be, wherever she could, she was going to be there.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, she does sound I mean, she's Guyanese, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Those they end up being very fiery, passionate women about things. If they feel like something should change, it's gonna change if they're around for it, you
Exactly.
know?
Exactly. Exactly.
That's really
Um,
cool.
and she was like, I mean, I spent a lot of time with her when she was a single parent. My parents split up when I was about 10. And so I spent a large number of years just living with her and my sister, um, which was like, it was interesting because like, she did her best to, she did her best to always have like male role models around. So when she had friends or colleagues, she would always encourage them to like, hang out. She would try and like, get us tickets to baseball games or whatever. And then she remarried eventually, and she brought my stepdad into the family, and was like very much, she like was pretty much like basically told them like, you know, very nicely, but like, this is my son. His father doesn't live here all the time. You need to like help him along. You need to make sure that because I can't teach him how to be a man. So you need to do this. Like, and she was very good at like calling in community to support me in those years.
Wow. Wow. That's a that's probably a hard step to take as a mother. I know my mom had to do the same thing. She wasn't exactly as vocal about it, but she definitely wanted those role models around. I mean, she even went as far to, even though I had three big brothers, she enrolled me in the Big Brother program just so I could be around somebody that was like an older male figure when she wasn't like
Yeah.
with anybody, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's tough. It's tough as a single mother. Tough.
It's it's tough. I don't really know how single parents can do it, because there are days with two parents and one kid that I'm just like, fuck this is too much. Like, I'm going for some milk and some cigarettes, and I'm not coming back.
You're like, Dad, let's go to Africa or something. Where you at?
Let's go. And so because of that, like, I mean, and it takes all my masculine strength in those moments, and all my ability to tap into, spiritual strength, to be like, yes, I feel this intensity, um, because this is hard. Like, parenting is fucking hard. And
Yeah.
so I just have nothing but respect for anybody who can put us like, who can just raise a kid, and to do it by yourself. It's like, it's mind blowing. So I'm always have that respect for my mom for being able to raise two kids by herself.
Yeah, like I'm like right now we're in the process of, like we want to start trying.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about it, and I always think, are we ready? Are we ready? And I always think exactly what you said. I'm like, there's going to be one of them, and there's going to be two of us. And then I think to my mom dealing with three of us, and like it just being her, like a lot of the time. Right. So it
Mm-hmm.
was just like, I don't like it. And we weren't fun. I mean, I was super introverted and quiet. And then my middle brother was like wild and just out there, and then like my other brother was like self-sufficient but like still your kid that you have to watch over, right? So it's like, whoa, just getting us all to school. And for my mom it was like she didn't come from any like affluent background or anything, so like she would deliver newspapers. That was like her job. She would deliver newspapers all night. And I remember she had a big Astro van. I don't even know if they make Astro vans anymore. She had a big van, and like at like 11 o'clock, she'd be like, "All right, I got to pile these kids into this van and make sure they got pillows and everything, and just like hopefully they can
Mm.
sleep and just go all night and just deliver papers, and by the time like get us back so we could like sleep in our beds for like an hour or so, or sometimes we'd have to go
Mhm.
straight to school. And
Oh my
she
gosh.
just had to get by. Sometimes she'd just be like, "Hey, we're all going to the convenience store. You guys want some pop?" She'd be like, "Let's get these guys some sugar because they're gonna have to be in school in about two
Yeah.
hours." And yeah,
Yeah.
she would just do that, and she did that for years, years and years and years before she expanded her skill set enough to get like an office job and everything.
Hmm.
And then at the
Hmm.
same time was a bodybuilder. She was like some of the first like body female bodybuilders in Ontario. So just to yeah, it's rough. Life can get rough.
Yeah.
you know man, and
Yeah.
nuts. It's nuts. Yeah, it does build up a crazy appreciation for that kind of thing. It builds up a crazy appreciation, like I don't know about you, for like for me, like for my parents and what they had to go through, and then also for my wife, because I'm like, oh, but I have this partner who's with me, and she's
Hmm.
great, and she's amazing at her job and like so supportive. And man, this the perspective, right? It's something.
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question, 'cause I got questions. Just some manhood questions for you.
Yeah.
That type of stuff. What was the time you felt the most like a man?
Hmm. It was the image comes to mind, and it was me. So this is like pre-COVID, so it was weird to see myself in a mask. But it was at the my son was in labor for 30 hours. My wife was in labor with my son for 30 hours,
Yeah.
and it went from the house. We had a midwife come into the house, deliver the baby, everything's chill. And after a certain amount of time, the midwife said, "Hey, I don't know if we can still do it here. Like, it's up to you guys, but you might want to consider going to the hospital." So then it's like to the hospital. So natural birth at home to natural birth at the hospital. Get to the hospital, spend some time. Uh, Doctors say we're gonna have to do a cesarean. We have to operate, and so it went like totally upside down. And and I remember just like standing in Tanya's room, and I was just doing like I think I had some Maladives or something, and I was just like doing this like counting of affirmations, and I must have did like thousands, 2,000, 3,000, and I just felt like my whole job was to maintain this space of peace and safety in the room while she was going through all the stuff that she was dealing with and doctors in, nurses in. I was just standing at the end of her bed, just trying to like keep it together. And I was freaking out because, you know, she's in pain, difficulty. My son's about, what's happening. So in my head, in the back of my head, I'm like having all these thoughts, but I just was able to like maintain this sense of like peace and this calmness. And I remember, so finally they're like, okay, like let's go to the operating room and we got to get, Dad, you're going to come in once we get her all set up. We don't want you to see anything that'll make you weird. So once we get everything set up and we get, everything going, we'll bring you in and you can sit next to her head. And as this thing happens, I'm like, okay. So like they get me going, get out my like surgeon's gown and hat. And I had my beard was even bigger. So it was just like poking out of everywhere. And I had this little, face mask over my thing. And I remember winking at myself in the mirror. I remember being like, just before I went into the OR, I just remember giving myself a little wink. And, and I was just like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. We can do this. It's going to work out. And that would be the answer to your question of like, where did I find myself the most feeling manly or masculine? It was like in that 30-hour span.
Wow. Wow. Jeez, even hearing this story gives me a little anxiety. Like I'm thinking, I'm like, oh gosh. But yeah, man, that would be a time. It's like you were a shaman of sorts in the room, keeping that energy.
I just feel like that if I think about it, like the masculine and the feminine energies, not as men and women, but just as those, you know, binary or polar energies that we exist within. Um, this idea of like space or the sky or um, the wheat field that goes on forever, the mountain. These are all, for me, these are all kind of like more masculine feeling like phenomenon. And so I relate to masculinity and I relate to the masculine energy like that space holding field, like that it's just the sky that goes on forever. And so there's just this energy of like anything can happen inside of that space. Another metaphor I like to use is like that of like a stage and at a theater, right? The energy on the stage, whatever can be created by the actors, wouldn't be possible without this structure, without the acoustics, without the state, without the auditorium, without the audience. And so that physical space for me is what I consider a lot. I relate to masculinity around that. So when I was in that room doing that energy, that's what I was trying to channel, was like that expansiveness, that space, that like that reassurance, that all is well.
Wow. Wow, that is literally some grown man shit. When people talk about grown man shit and they're talking about having a watch and stuff like that, like that's the actual grown man shit. Like, wow. Wow. Because we actually want to do it the same kind of way. Have a midwife, and she's very avid about being natural with the whole thing. So yeah, yeah, that's definitely wow. Inspiring. Very inspiring.
I I mean, in terms of midwife, I couldn't speak more highly of them. I feel like everybody should uh, not everybody should have one, but I feel like everyone who's having a kid should at least look into what it would be like to have that support. Because you don't have to have a kid at home. You could have a midwife and still give birth at the hospital or at the clinic or whatever. But I just felt like the care as a new dad, especially, I remember walking into the midwifery clinic and I was like, my partner was still pregnant. And so we were there first visit and there's just like kids running around and moms and pregnancy everywhere. And I was like, what the fuck is this? What is this? I'm not ready for this shit. I'm not ready for this. Like, this is not what I was like that first moment of like, oh shit, this is real.
Mm.
And but they were, I feel like, yeah, midwife she was really helpful for obviously for Tanya, but also for me, like being able to answer questions and stuff in a way that a doctor just ain't gonna have time for. So
Yeah.
yeah, huge fan.
Cool. Cool. And so now, what was a time where you felt the most not like a man?
Mm. It's actually, there's a couple of different times, but it was when I couldn't make myself do something I wanted to do. Um, I It took me a long time to really figure out that as a person, I'm pretty energetically sensitive, and so the combination of things that I need in my day to keep me going, like the amount of self care and the amount of just like healthy things that I need to do, practices and whatnot, just to keep me kind of going and keep me productive all the time. I was not aware of that, and so I would go through these phases of like extreme productivity, extreme burnout, and when I would be burnt out or hungover or a combination of both, I would not be able to physically like make myself go somewhere. And so I remember my friend's dad's funeral, and it was on one of those mornings that I could not make myself get up, and I was like cursing my fuck, get up, get the fuck up, stand up, get up, this voice, and this other voice was like, no, I can't. And
Wow.
in that moment of I can't or I'm giving up, um, that's where I feel least like a man.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a great I you always suspect certain answers, but that's actually that's actually a great one because that's probably the least time that we feel like men when we can't do something that we want to do that we're supposed to do. That's actually really true. Like thinking back in my life, yeah, yeah, that is the time where you feel the least like that because you should be able to get up and do the things that you need to do, the
Mm-hmm.
important things, even the
Mm-hmm.
things that just bring you joy. Like you should be able to just go and do them. That's actually a really good answer. Huh. Yeah.
The
Now I'm
funny
thinking
part
back to all the
about that,
go ahead.
no, I was going to say the funny part about it is that it was only when I learned the feminine energy and like how to balance that within me that I actually was able to be the man that I want to be all the time. So it was only when I learned that I'm sensitive, that I need certain things, that I need to like meditate and I need to exercise and go on my stupid walks for my stupid mental health. I that only came about because I had to surrender into I can't do this. Like this isn't working. So what's missing? And
Mm-hmm.
what was missing was all of this like nurturing and like actually listening and like being attentive. Those are all things that I didn't have, and therefore I would just go through these like crazy ass cycles.
Yeah, it's funny how we associate that with, because that's the feminine energy, which we all have both. It's funny how we always associate that with women and how that's not something that we should need as men. Because I've gone through the exact same thing. I mean, people always comment on this improvement board that I have in my living room where I'm checking these things off that I have to do for mental health and to feel loved and to feel like I'm showing love and all of it is just so I can it's all nurturing, like you just said. It's nurturing myself, making sure I do these things. It's not like a grind hustle thing. It's like, one of the things on the board is like telling my wife that I appreciate her. Like that's not a grind hustle hard guy thing. You know what I mean? Like, and then I also have my walks that I need to take every day, like for at least 15 minutes and take my shoes off somewhere and ground and just do that self-care. It's funny that we always associate that softness with females, but it's something that we all need as guys. Like I'm always trying to convince my guy friends to, like, take your shoes off in the field and just walk around. They're like, nah, nah. And it's like,
Oh
why
man, have
not?
have you seen Black Men Frolicking on TikTok? It's
Yeah, my buddy shared it
fucking,
with
it's the
me.
best. It's the best. We're out here frolicking, and I'm like, yes, that's exactly what we need. We need that like that energy, of like of
uh,
manly men giving like masculine men giving other men permission to just be like, yeah, we're frolicking in a field. There's nothing wrong with that. We're
yeah,
just having a good time. We're just running around. We're just playing. We're
yeah.
just enjoying being outside. It's I think it's a scam that's been run on us to get us to work in offices and factories. Like I think that
Mm.
whole masculine, feminine, like that disconnection of those forces is also like, that we can be manipulated to like do things that we wouldn't normally want to do.
You know what? Yeah, you hit it on the head because when you bring those things in, at least I found it brings alignment. And once you
Yeah.
bring alignment of mind, body, and spirit, it's like there's certain things that you just will not allow yourself to do anymore. All of a sudden,
Mm-hmm.
you have a different value of yourself. All of a sudden, what your heart's desires become at the forefront of importance, you know, rather than just things that you push in the back of your head while you're just grinding at the job and doing all the things
Mm-hmm.
that all these different people want you to do. That's so true. So true. Because yeah, once like that was a huge thing for the board for me. because like I have like prayer, like I go into prayer, meditation. I have to stretch. I have to complete a fast. I have to tell my wife I appreciate her. I have to read. Like all these things are, get enough sleep. Follow a to-do list, make a to-do list, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's just all of it just aligns me completely. And the
Mm-hmm.
second that I got aligned, all of a sudden I started doing this. I started my clothing company. I started coaching because that's always been that's
Mm-hmm.
always been in my heart to do that and help men and help people and talk things through with people. And yeah, all of a sudden you just start doing all the things you've always wanted to do. If you would only just take your shoes off and frolic through a field.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Like it's I used to like women. If you've ever lived with a woman, and you know like the whole like the routines, the skincare routines, the hair washing routines. Like they're just like constantly. A lot of the women that I know anyway are just constantly like soothing and caring for themselves. They're always like rubbing on lotion. They're always like
Yeah,
doing stuff to make them feel good. Take a
yeah,
bath, light a candle, and it's so interesting because I think what I look at now when I see someone who is in power, who is in their power, be they whatever gender they are, I tend to notice that it's the people with the strongest self care practice or whatever you call it. It doesn't have to be called that, but like that take care of themselves the best, have the strongest boundaries, are the ones that you can't push over or you can't fuck with. It's weird how like the softness of self care leads to like a hardness of an energy that of just like don't fuck with me energy.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, very well put. It's the value, right? Like once you start taking care of yourself, it's like if you start taking care of a plant very avidly, and then all of a sudden somebody wants to like jerk it around. You're like, oh, buddy, buddy, buddy. I take care of this thing all the time. What are you doing? Don't just that's not what we do with this thing. Okay. You got to
Don't
treat
fuck
this
with
with
the plant.
care. Yeah, like you respect this thing. This is my thing here. You know, it's
Yeah,
yeah, it's
well
it's
put.
solid. It's solid. I guess since we're in the feminine energy talk, what is your outlook on vulnerability?
Hmm. I think that like I'm a big fan of intentional vulnerability,
Mm,
of knowing that I like it's a conscious process of being like, okay, I'm gonna say something that means something to me. I'm gonna share something from my past that's difficult to say. I'm gonna talk to someone. I'm gonna say to my partner or say to a friend like, I'm not having a great day today. I need a little support today. I am uncertain about the future. So I think it's super important to express vulnerability, and especially with myself. In my morning pages, which is another one of my practices, and that's where I tend to be the most vulnerable, both in my journal and then in my men's circle, is where I tend to bring up vulnerable topics. Um, but I find that I use my when I like I start when I started coaching about 7 or so years ago, I would do a lot of like these big shares on Facebook. Like talk about my stomach churning anxiety or my feeling like my lack of self worth from being heavy or overweight or all these sort of like things that are important to talk about, but I felt I was maybe doing a little bit too much of like a shotgun approach to it, just sort of like spraying it out. And
mm,
I feel like now I think that vulnerability is power, um, but like power, it doesn't necessarily achieve the result that we're looking for unless it's has some sort of a container with it or some sort of intention behind
true. True. I've never never actually thought of that concept of intentional vulnerability because that is it'll be more impactful, right? I mean, you're paying. It's like you're paying your experience reverence.
it. Yes.
rather than just like getting it all out like that. Hmm. I like that. I like that a lot. I'm gonna definitely take that with me. That's a good one. That's a really good one. But when was the what was the time where you felt most vulnerable and how did you deal with it?
Um, it was, I know exactly the moment. It was like 2 years into like an awakening experience or journey that I quit my job. I got kicked out of my house because I was like late on rent. I wasn't working. I was just trying to like start a business and pay rent and do everything at the same time. I was just like, fuck it. I had so much optimism that I just was like, I don't need any of these structures and these rules. Like I'm trying to blow it all up. And so I just, I rented out my room next door, Airbnb that wasn't really my room. It was like the landlord's, but as long as we paid extra rent, they didn't care. It was just like this, just like wheeling and dealing like all the fucking time. Just like, oh, if I go to this person's house, if they invite me over, I'll tell them that I can only make it around dinner time, and they'll be like, well, why don't you stay for eats, man? Come on in. And so that was like there was I was like the vulnerability was around money and resources. That's where I felt vulnerable because I just was like I didn't know what to do necessarily in what direction. I wanted to start coaching and I had healing practice that I was building and so I would have like I would go days where I was just trying to like every day like okay my budget today is like $6. My budget today is like eight fifty. I have 48 cents in my checking account. I have $1.50 in my savings account. It's like I can take the bus to this event today, kind of thing. And so I remember like my I was Tanya was living with her parents, and she's like, yeah, and I would actually at this point I think I would like hang out on people's houses to like sleep over and stuff. Like I didn't even have a place. I was just like couch surfing or whatever. And I remember walking outside and she'd say, okay, you come to my house, but like my mom, she works late. So wait till she's home and she lives just downstairs in the basement and her apartment. So wait till she's done her thing and then I'll come get you and let you in. So, but it's winter time and it's like maybe like 12 midnight and it's like minus 30 and I'm walking around this neighborhood where Tanya lives and I was like, holy fuck, I don't have anywhere to go. Like, I'd already exhausted the patience of my parents and there was like, you got to go, you got to find your own way, son. Like, you can't keep coming back home. And so I was like in that place of like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And something in me just said, keep going, keep going. You can't, whatever this is, you got to get through it. However shitty this feels to be like outside shivering, knowing I have a place to stay. So it wasn't like I had to like, I wasn't in danger, but I was in deep discomfort. I was in like, this sucks. Like, I don't have a place that's my own. I don't have a place that I'm like literally like sneaking up on a balcony to a girl's house. Um, and she's much, she was much younger than me. I was like a man. I was like a grown man in my 30s. And I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, what is happening? What has happened to my life? What is this? And yeah, there was a voice. There was just an inner sound of just, don't worry about it. Keep going.
Wow. Wow. That is yeah, that's hard. That's hard. That's very hard. Uh just yeah, the budget of $6 and I've had to deal with stuff like that. And it's always yeah, the way I've always thought of it, it always pops into my head and I'd always laugh even in the worst situations. I'd always be like, this is gonna be a great story when I'm a millionaire. And I'm like talking to some people. When I'm like in a good place, this is gonna be like a great story.
Yeah. At that time I was doing things like saying 5,000 affirmations a day of I am abundant in all aspects of my life. And it was like I I was just um,
Love you. That was the wife.
That's nice. Um, yeah, uh, I was just sure that it was going to work out. I didn't know how. I knew that I could always go back to like the job life if I needed to. You know, I knew that but I hated myself when I was there. I hated the experience, and so I knew it was gonna it was weird. It was like either I had a choice. It was all around that time. Not obviously things overlap as the further we get from them, but all around that time, I just had this feeling that like I would rather starve than go back to working for somebody else on their terms. Um, I would rather I would rather live on $6 a day doing what I love than making $60,000 a year doing what I despise. And so it was.
Oh, you froze for a second here. Let's see. Come back to us, sir. Just a little frozen. I don't know if you can hear me. Maybe just a little frozen. Uh, uh, I don't know. Oh, video's off. Oh, now you're back.
Yes.
So
Um,
you're just saying you would rather, make the $6 a day than have to work the 60,000 job
yeah,
life.
and that's where I really became my own man, was during that like year to 18 months, because up until then I'd always had an escape valve, an escape hatch. You know, my dad would, I could call him and be like, hey, I need like $200, I'll pay you back this day, this, that, and the other. I could call my mom and say like, hey mom, can you lend me this, I got that. And eventually they were just like, hey, you a man now, you got to just like, we're not helping you if we help you in this way.
Yeah.
And so this journey that I went on was just like I had to show myself that I could take care of myself. That I didn't need someone to take care of me. I didn't need anybody to get my back and to like, have that in my back pocket. Like I just needed to like build a life for myself. And I just needed to um, show myself that I could do it, that I could get up every goddamn day without a boss, without pressure, and just do what I needed to do.
Yeah. That's a great place to be in. And that's in some ways that's a big turning point as a man in general when you realize that you can do that, when you all of a sudden are starting to give yourself the concrete experience of that you can actually make that happen. Me myself, that's actually where I am right now. I was working in film and television for some years, and the things that were just going on around me, and the people and the things that you see, just they just weren't sitting right with my soul. And I wanted to move away from it, and I started coaching, and I've been doing really good, fairly good in that. And now I'm at a point where it's like, am I going to have to go back to that, or can I make it? And now I'm just pushing as hard as I can to make it with the clothing and with the coaching, and trying to just have those conversations, and just trying to do what coaches do, right? And personal training and stuff. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's some days it's like, is this gonna work? And other days it's like, it's working. Like, nothing to worry about. So it's like, yeah, it's a hard place to be in, but it's the most invigorating. It's the most, yeah, it's the best place to be in. Even when it feels like it's the worst, it's the best place to be in, because it's better to build those blocks of being that person than it is to be running those steps in like the job life. Not that jobs are horrible or anything, but like some are, and it all depends on how you feel in it. Some people love their 9 to 5 job and everything, but if it was something that was like terrorizing your soul, it's like it's so much better to be making those other steps towards being your own boss, and running on your own schedule and stuff like that. So yeah, yeah, it's definitely something. I'm
To
glad
me,
you came out of it.
that's what a man is to me. is like someone that sets their own goddamn schedule, like that rises and sleeps by their own leave, by like that sets the tone for how they're gonna live. And I think for me, the ability to set my own schedule and then to the responsibility to follow it,
Mm.
that's where I feel my masculinity start to bubble up. That's where I feel the strength, like day after day after day of just like waking up, doing my shit, get to the next thing, doing my shit, and then having that like, I mean, now it's like 9 years of being like out of my own, so to speak, of being like a free person.
Yeah.
And it's at the point now where I'm like, even bad days don't phase me.
Mm.
Even shitty days don't phase me because I'm like, oh well, today sucked. Tomorrow, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, right? Because what else? I mean, what else is there to do? You can't wallow in the bad days, right? You can only step into the new ones and just make good days. That's the life. I was gonna say that's the life of an entrepreneur, but that is the life of a man. Like you just have to go day by day, you know?
I think for me, I feel there's probably between 10 and 30 days a year that are just gonna suck. That I'm just
Mm.
gonna like feel no wind at my back, that I'm going to be dealing with difficult people, that I'm going to say things that I regret, that I'm not going to do myself care in a way that I need to. Whatever the combination of things that leads to like the worst day ever, I'm going to have at minimum 10. In a great year, I'm going to have 10.
Yeah.
10 days that just I'm just like fuck this, I don't want to do it. And and when I started to recognize that would happen, then I didn't get upset, because what happened for me was I would have these like months or weeks of just like flow and energy and everything's going positive, and then I would have like a week or 3 4 days of just shit, and I would use that as an excuse to show me that the other stuff wasn't working. Like,
Mm.
how could I be this great if I just said that to that person, or if I felt this despair, or if I decided I didn't want to do this work anymore? And I recognize that is part of it. That's part of, for me, that masculinity is being able to like ride out the rough days and not get too out in front of my skis on the great days.
True. True. That's yeah. See, that's why I want to have these conversations because that's an important lesson for a lot of guys, and we just don't talk about stuff like this enough. But yeah, that's 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 impactful for me because just a few months ago I was having some of the worst days, and like now I'm having some of the best, and I was up till like 1 a.m. like printing out all these printouts that I'm gonna put on shirts today and just solidifying my first sale, my first real sale from somebody that's like not a friend, like they're like, it's great. So it's like, just yeah, there's good and bad days. 10 to 30 is good. When you look at it like that, if you can just come to terms with that and like every day you have one of them, you're just like, well, here's the 10 to 30 days. Like that's okay. There's 365. It's like, it's not all that bad.
It's unreasonable to expect that our lives are going to be like just hunky dory
Mm,
every damn day. Like, it's just unrealistic, and it's delusional to think
mm,
that. To think
yeah.
that you're not going to have a hard day, or to think that people that are successful don't have difficult days, or that you as a success is not going to have. We're all going to have the worst day of the year in 2022. Each of us is going to have one day that we're like, that is the worst fucking day of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. I had mine. I had mine already. So I'm grateful for that. Pretty sure. Yeah, it was a rough day. Rough day. But I mean, it's funny because that was the darkest day and it brought about the most light into my life. So yeah, it's funny how that happens, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
But going into emotions, like dealing with your emotions. We talked about vulnerability and how you're intentional with it, but like how do you deal with your emotions, when they come up?
I try to express them
Mm,
as much as I can. I try
yeah.
and I try and be honest about them with me and with those around me.
Mm,
Um,
true.
it's something that I'm actually working with my son on when he feels emotions, like how to help him manage his emotions. And one of the things that I really love that he does, and he doesn't always do it. Sometimes, like yesterday, he went into his room and he fucking knocked the lamp over because he was upset that he couldn't see his mom because she was on a call. And so some days he does that, and it happens. And but other days he'll say, "I'm mad," like I'm mad, So I was getting him to like say that when he's upset, to say it. I mean, you don't have to hit something or hit somebody. Just say you're fucking angry. Say
Yeah.
I'm mad.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I try to do with myself as much as I can, with my partner or colleagues, to say, hey, I'm feeling sad. I don't know
Mm.
why, but I'm feeling a bit sad today, or I'm feeling a bit sensitive today, or I'm feeling a bit pissed off today, or whatever. I think for me, emotions are power, and
Mm.
emotions are the current that all of these nice ideas and thoughts and insights actually will ride along. So it's the emotions that will actually move things. Um, that's what moves people. Literally, we get moved by our emotions, but it's often what moves us into action as well. So I honor emotions. I respect them. I do my best to do that, to respect other people's as well.
That is good. And it's great to hear that you're teaching your son. That's a task. I don't know for sure, but it seems like that would be a task. Because I mean, getting your own under control and being able to express them is a task. Now all of a sudden it's like you have to bring that to somebody else and hopefully they execute on it properly, especially such a little person, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like we're gonna put him into martial arts and
Mm,
teach him how to breathe, specifically,
true.
because he has very intense emotions. Um, like his mom, like his dad, we're in a very emotional house. My partner is, I would say, of all the elements, like water is her element, and so what comes with that is people who are water connected people are the emotions, and her emotions can be devastating. Like they can like change, they could turn a bright room dark,
Mm,
or the opposite. So her emotions are very powerful, and so she's learning how to process her emotions more, and she's not very verbal with that because like growing up she was not she's very introverted, so she's not used to talking about her emotions. She's just used to feeling them,
mm,
and until I learned that, it would cause it would I would get unsettled by her emotions. My emotions would get like triggered by her emotions. And so part of what I feel like being a man in this context, or masculine energy in this context, is how to not allow my emotions and the emotions of others to take me to a place that I don't want to go,
mm.
to let me off the hook from being the kind of person I want to be in those moments. And so it's just I feel like there's a balance with emotions of letting them out, expressing them, and yet not letting them dictate how we're going to respond to any given situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. I mean, I've heard a quote, letting your feelings get out of control, um, can take you to places that you didn't want to go and keep you there longer than you wanted to be there. Like that. Yeah, that kind of thing. It's yeah, that's a big thing. It's a big thing. Amazing, man. So this question is, what was your biggest regret as a man? What was like something that you wish that you did more, something that you did earlier as a
Mhm.
man that like you do now, something that you just wish you took on earlier?
I would say it's thinking about others before I think of myself. I really love the idea of leaders eat last, um, and protecting and taking care of friends and family and colleagues. And I didn't get that until later than I wish I got it.
Mm,
Obviously, timing is everything in this life.
Mm.
So I don't necessarily regret the things that I did or didn't do in a lot of cases, except when it comes to not showing up for people. Those are where my regrets are. Either taking advantage of people by not being an equal friend in a friendship, um, by being the one that takes instead of gives, or not having a balance of giving and receiving. And yeah, like there were times where I thought of myself and I thought of my own safety and my own comfort before I thought of others and people who were close to me. And so that's something that I would say I regret those moments where I didn't show up for people in a way that I wish I could have, or I wish I knew how to.
Mm. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I'm actually the opposite in that, like, just taking on too much of other people's stuff and taking care of everybody, and then not even eating last, but just like completely not eating at all, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird. It's weird, things like that. But even as you're saying, not showing up for people, I've had that as well. People that I felt like I could have showed up for, that you see in certain situations. And it's like, if you could just, because like you just said, like things that you know how to show up in certain ways that other people don't. And it's like, if I was
Yeah.
just there, I know I could have XYZ, and everything would have been
Mhm.
better. So we think, right? Because like we don't actually know. It's just, that's kind of just your heart kind of coming into play
Mhm.
there, you know. But yeah, true. um Another question: what do you feel is the biggest misconception that young men, or what does it say? Yeah, the biggest misconception about being a man that you had growing up.
Wow. Um, I think it was around women. I think it was an idea of how to how to get women to like me, and how to be seen as as an attractive man to a woman. Um, I remember I was like I was watching all these like pickup artist videos, YouTube videos back in the day, just trying to like get all the moves and the lines and this and that. And I was scared to death of actually talking to women. Like,
Mm,
I would need to have a couple of drinks and I would need to like be in a situation. I would prefer if someone introduced me to the person and all these things that, I was like, I like my I just thought that the reason I wasn't getting getting women, or I didn't have these partners, was because that somehow I didn't know what to say, or I didn't have the lines down, or somehow I wasn't an asshole enough, or whatever it was. And
yeah.
so I that's what I thought, and I remember a good friend of mine, who was herself like a big player. Like she would leave like men like bodies in her wake, just bodies. And so she said to me, she said, she's like, listen, when you want to talk to a woman, just go up and say hi. Just
Mm,
introduce yourself. Just talk to her. Just
mm,
talk to her. Just ask her questions. Just be yourself. Be who you are. You know. And I think that was the biggest misconception. Like I had some like early heartbreaks, as as tend to happen in adolescence, and I took the wrong lessons from those heartbreaks. I took
mm,
the lessons that, like, oh, I've got to be this, or like I lost that girl to that guy and he's like this, let me be like this, or my
mm,
friends pick up women at bars and they sleep with them the same night, or they're like this, so I need to be like this.
mm,
And it's it's just not true. Like it literally. Um, of course, there are men in situations, and I have empathy and compassion for men who maybe have like physical disformities, or something about them that doesn't make them like necessarily attractive to women. They're not like a traditionally attractive looking male, and I understand that that's to hear someone saying like just be yourself, to those kind of people is like, okay, fuck you. Like I am being myself and I'm lonely and alone. So what do you want from me? If I just be myself more, am I going to get women? And the answer is actually yes. I find that another thing, I misconception that I have about growing up is that women are much more forgiving about physical flaws, and even not having like the best financial situation. Like I've noticed that women, if you are a good man and you're trying your best to like do it right, and you're trying to treat people right, and you're trying to treat yourself right, women are attracted to that. Women are attracted to the effort. Women are attracted to the possibility. And if you are someone who can have integrity and be honest about who you are and where you are in your life, they will help you along. They will take you in, and they will nurture you and support you and encourage you to keep going. And as long as you're willing to keep striving and keep trying, most of the time women will stick by you. So yeah, I think looking at attraction, it's different. Way that sometimes men and women feel about attraction is different. And I think for men, it's like we can't assume that women are going to be just like us. We can't assume that our like fierce standards for physical perfection, that they're going to reciprocate those, because they often aren't. Like a lot of guys who are not great looking, smart and funny, still gets women.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of smart and funny women out there who don't fall into the standard of beauty that men appreciate, that are alone. So when it comes to that, women tend to be a little bit more forgiving about flaws in men. I've noticed.
So yeah, honestly, yeah, I can second that definitely. I mean, my wife was a huge example of that. I mean, back when she was just the girl that I just met, she would always just be like like literally when we first met, I was switching jobs constantly, going from job agency because I hated these soul sucking jobs. Um, and I remember I was living in my mom's basement. I had a huge hole in the wall when I let my emotions get out of control that I had kicked in. Um, yeah, I just had all this stuff, but she's like, I really like your ambition. She's like, and you're like a good, like I had just like changed a lot, I got out of the underworld or the drug trade and all the bad things I was doing. I'd been out for some years, getting out of a bad relationship, and she's like, I like the ambition. She's like, you're
Mm-hmm.
very ambitious, and it was just exactly what you just said. Like she could see the potential in like who I was trying to become, and like that was more attractive to her than anything else. And yeah, I mean, and literally within like the first 2 months that we had met, I didn't even have enough money to pay my phone bill. And she was like, well, I want to keep talking to you, so I'm gonna lend you some money to pay your phone bill. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. But yeah, exactly what you're saying. Like they're way more forgiving than you would think, especially if you're a good man. If you're a good man, I mean,
Yeah.
that's basically what you're summing up there with integrity and being nice and how you treat people. If you're a good man, then yeah, they'll look past a lot of vanity that we think that they cling on to, you know?
It's because we're the vain ones. That's the thing. Like we have a lot more vanity than we want to admit, because we often
Mm,
don't see it. Like it might not be like in, do I look perfect in this outfit, but it might be, do I look cool in front of my friends? Do I
yep.
look awesome to my colleagues? So
Mhm.
vanity is something that men have to tackle as well. Like what does our vanity look like?
Yep.
And a lot of male vanity is around the how their friends think about the women that they date. And
Mm,
so a lot of men, we date women not because we actually like them or because they actually care about us, but because we'll be able to like say some cool shit to our friends, like, and they'll maybe make our friends jealous because our girlfriends are so hot.
yeah.
And and so that's vanity. Like that's total vanity. That's like
Of course.
it's missing out on um, it's missing out on the possibility of true connection and true attraction with someone just because they don't check all those boxes. Sometimes it's worth the risk to see.
Yeah, 100%. I did exactly that with my wife. I mean, she's beautiful and everything, but like she wasn't she wasn't what I was going for at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I intentionally did that. I was like, let me step outside of things. Like I was usually like with shorter girls and darker hair and usually like Jewish backgrounds and stuff like that. Like I was like into that Middle Eastern and stuff. And funny enough, I was on Tinder and I'm like, let's just go for like I paid for Tinder. That's how hurting I was. I paid for it and it was unlimited. So I'm swiping and I'm like, let's just go for blonde girls today. And I just kept swiping on blonde girls. And thankfully she popped up and she was
Mm-hmm.
taller. She was blonde. She was white. She was just straight white, just, as white as can be, just Manitoba and PEI. Like there's nothing whiter in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, you know what? Let's just talk to this person. Like, why not? Like,
Yeah.
what's the big deal? I mean, and it was the best decision I ever made. And I always tell my friends just from that experience is like step outside what you think you should be with, who you think you should be with, what you think they should look like. Like step outside all that and like incredible things happen when you do that. Like this is the most incredible woman I've ever met. I mean, that wouldn't have happened if I just stayed in this box of like, let me get this, let me go for it. Like not even the hottest girl, but like the thing that that maybe it's like the most sought after girl or the one that all the guys know that nobody could get. Like like that's
Mm-hmm.
just not where it is. It's just not. It's weird. Man. So, what do you think the most difficult part about being a man is?
I mean, at the moment, it's coming to terms with the patriarchy in terms of like what coming to terms with masculinity today, like what it means to be a man right now, is the hardest thing about masculinity because we're in this. I feel like we're in this vice, uh, men right now. Like we're in a very very narrow space to that. There's very little. Uh, there's a lot there's less space to be all kinds of men than there used to be, but there is still more space for diversity in masculinity. So I acknowledge that both of those things are happening, but I also feel like because of the fact that we can't look to our fathers and our grandfathers and our great grandfathers for how they did it, because what they did and how they did it is not the world that we live in anymore. So, and more to the point that what they did and how they did it was kind of fucked up. It wasn't. It wasn't. They weren't necessarily attentive to their wives and partners. They did not acknowledge the emotions of life. They weren't vulnerable with themselves or with their peers. So some of the things that have come from the past, we need to shift away
Yeah.
some of the practices that have happened are toxic. There is such a thing as toxic masculinity, and so we're the generation that is having to come to terms with that and figure out how we're going to make changes for the future and what we're going to keep and what we're not going to keep.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I uh I second that. It's hard to yeah, it's like some things that we lost are like a lot of rites of passage, but then like you said, the other things that we lost that maybe are good is like the no attentiveness to the woman. Like how she's feeling doesn't matter, how you're feeling doesn't matter. All that matters is that we get by and that we have food. It was like, yeah, it's such a different world, such a different world. And then at the same time, it's like it still does matter that we have food. You
Yes,
still do have to focus on those things.
yes,
It's like that didn't go
yes.
away. So it's like this whole it's like in some ways it's like there's things that you need to add that make it feel so much, and then there's things that you need to take away. Like you need to
Mhm.
add in the attentiveness to your wife, the attentiveness to your kids, teaching them how to deal with emotions, and then you have to take away like certain things that were just like viewed as like very toxic. you know like I mean, even right down to like I think it was just in America, I don't know where else it was, but like the rule of thumb. Like, do you know what
Yeah,
that comes from? Like you can
yeah.
hit your wife with something as long as it was like just as thick as your thumb.
I
Like,
think it was our good moral friends, the British, that came up with that.
Yeah, I'm sure. True. Like just wild stuff, right? So it's such a blend. And so in so many ways I'm super traditional,
Hmm.
with my wife, and so we're both very traditional, but then we're also very new age. I mean, like she works, I mean, for a long time she was the one making more money and everything, and that changed, but that didn't change our relationship in any way. um yeah, it's weird. Like she likes to be super traditional, but also like right now she just headed out to go run a restaurant, and I'm gonna stay home, and the dishwasher is something that I'm gonna empty out, and I'm gonna handle the laundry, and I like, so
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's such a weird balancing act. Such a weird balancing act.
I think that one of the things you said sparked something, and that is around initiation, rites of passage. And for a long time, I thought, oh, we don't have rites of passage anymore. We've lost these things. But then someone pointed out that actually, no, we have them. They're just revolving around capitalism. So
Hmm.
when you get your first car, when you get your
Mm,
first job, when you
mm,
graduate from school, when you buy your first house, these are the initiations. These are the modern, rites of passage that we go through. So it's not that we've lost them; it's just that we've like made them all around money. And
wow.
so even to be a man now, you have to have money to be a man. You have to have that masculinity, and that's like where my kind of my mom's side of the family comes from. It's just like you don't have to you don't have to chop wood. You don't have to defend your family against a monster or an attacking army, but you
Yep.
do need to have a Mercedes in the garage. You
Mm,
do need to have a bunch of money, saved in your retirement, and that's what a man is, which really doesn't, it's not that masculine. Like being able to acquire resources isn't the most masculine of things, to be
yeah.
like, what do you do? I work in an office, I wear a tie, and I do these, oh, wow, you're senior VP of blah, blah, blue for an insurance company. You must be a real man. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, that guy sits in a chair all day.
Yeah.
That guy doesn't do anything physical. Like I don't know. I mean, not yeah, it's just one of those weird things that like capitalism is kind of like stuck its thumb in the middle of our eye in a lot of different cases.
So true. As soon as you said that, right away I was like, "Oh, your first car, that used to be your first kill. That used to be the first time you went hunting and you like killed
Mm-hmm.
something that could provide for your family. Now it's like your first car, so you can just drive around and eventually get that job and take yourself to the job and all that stuff." It's so true. Yeah, it all revolves around money. Now, it's funny because like my father-in-law, it's I always get like a reality check because like I feel like very much manly. I'm a big guy, this that, and then my wife will just be like, yeah, so my dad's just building a shed. Yeah, he's just building it. I'm like, oh, who's he calling? Nobody. He's just gonna build it. It should take like a couple weeks maybe. I'm like, what? He's building a structure like with his hands? Like it's like wild, wild stuff, like just like that. But it's like, yeah, we lost a lot of that stuff, or like it evolved into something that in some ways it shouldn't have evolved to. Like it's hard because it's like you said, like we were saying before, it's like you need some of these things. You need the money, you need that stuff, but also it's like I think we should know how to like build a thing, like in the men's group, like I've always had this dream of like making a men's retreat, and like one of the things that we would do is build something together, like with our own hands. There'd be one man, like there used to be one elder who would be able to show us what to do, and we all get together as brothers and build this thing, and make sure it's sturdy, and make sure it can actually provide the shelter, or whatever it may be that it needs to do, because it's important. It's still important, you know. It's weird. Ah, manhood. But I guess the last question, because we can wrap it up. I got too many questions. I got to learn how to cut this back a little bit. But what should I go with? Uh, what's the most important lesson you learned about being a man and manhood?
um, Never give up.
Hmm.
Never fucking give up.
True.
Ever. Ever. Failure is fine. Stopping is not. And I, where I learned that lesson from being a dad, being a new father. Like I really, I, you know, I joked earlier about like, hey, I feel like I'm going for a pack of smokes. I'm never coming back. I felt that. I felt that. Like the only option I had two options: stand or run, stay or leave. And to me, being a man is staying. It's never giving up. And it's that spirit that I got. A lot. I that was from my dad actually. That he brought that energy. And just doing like learning martial arts growing up and learning about the spirit of never giving up and like learning about how to rely on spirit and my own spirit to continue even when it's hopeless, even when it's gloomy and dark. And I feel this in the world right now. I feel like this lack of hope everywhere, that people are just like, they've given up, they've thrown in the towel. Well, we can't do it. We can't, like, our world's too fucked up. It's too violent. It's too capitalist. It's too this, it's too that. And I'm just like, why are you giving up? We can have all these conversations when the world goes to shit. And when it's truly post-apocalyptic, then we can be like, yeah, that was really hard. We couldn't save it. We couldn't save ourselves. But that's an after conversation. Like, why are you talking about giving up before the game is over? Why are you talking about how it's all over? And so for me, what's needed in the world right now is that masculinity of like, fuck that. We're going to go to the end. We're going to play till the whistle. We're going to play till the very, very end. And we're not going to give up our hope or our optimism until the game is over. And if that kind of spirit, win or lose, that moves us forward.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that, because it does bother me when people talk like it's already over, and I'm like, it's so far from being over. Like things aren't as bad. Like, like, have you seen like the Great Depression? Have you seen like, like, have you seen actual societies collapse? Like what it actually looks like? Like we're not even close right now. Like you just had to pay a 10 extra dollars to fill your tank. Like we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I think if you are like, if you look at the environmental impact of what's happening, in the world, if you look at the decline of democracy and the rise of authoritarianism, these are all things that are happening. I'm not saying that life is great. I'm saying that life is actually, in a lot of ways, it's as hard as it's ever been to to make a change, a fundamental change in how human life works. But that, I think about the third movie of the Matrix, the trilogy, the last one, the Revolution one, and how at the end where Neo fights Smith, and he has nothing. He can't beat him. He can't beat Smith. Like he doesn't have the. Smith is like now more evolved as a fighter, and he can't beat him physically with the technique alone. All he has is his will. All he has is determination to not give up, and that is what eventually throws off Smith. Is that he can't believe that after the punishment he's just leveled up to this person, that they're still coming back for more. And it's that like, I'm always coming back for more energy. That is what's needed. That's like the real masculine energy of like, I'm not going to stop until this world works for everybody. And I don't care if I'm the last only person, shouting that this needs to happen. Like I'm going to be the crazy guy who's going to fight for this no matter what. Like no matter what.
Yeah, definitely, man. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I remember when you were here in Ontario, we were always talking about how we need to get together and do something, and it didn't pan out quite, but I'm so glad that we got to do this. So glad.
Yeah, thank you.
Timing's everything, like you said.
My in my men's circle, we have little gestures that we use when someone else is sharing, but we want to like either agree or show empathy. And so we do, if someone says something that we really like, we give ourselves 3 chest pounds. Or at the end of the share, when someone's done, we'll do that too. So after someone's sharing, we'll give them a little.
Cool. Cool. Well, to you, sir. Thank you so much. Also, where can people find you? What do you got going on? What do you want to?
Well, the thing I want to, I mean, I do, you can find me on Instagram at Urquio's World or on Twitter, Nick Vitar. I do a lot of copywriting, a lot of content creation, and just general marketing shenanigans. But what I'm excited about is a book that I'm working on that hopefully will be out this year. It's called Douchebag to Divine, and it's a handbook for young men who seek sexual maturity and emotional maturity as they in relationships.
Wow, that's incredible, man. That is really incredible. Yeah, yeah. When that's out, let me know because I'm working on doing some work around the schools in the area and stuff, and that would be a cool thing to be able to impart on some people.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the platform.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you again, and guys, that was the Open Brother Project. This was Open Brother Nick, and we're out. Thank you, man.
Thank you.